This is the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we teach you the proven methods to grow your seven-figure business to 10 million and beyond. Please welcome your host, Brett Gilliland.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast. As you know, I have guests every week who bring tremendous insights to the seven-figure scaling journey from 1 to 10 million. We often have business owners. Sometimes we have experts. Today we have both. We have a business owner who happens to be a subject matter expert as well. Let me introduce you to Deb Gabor. Deb, welcome to our show.
Well, thank you. And also we have a small business owner back here who owns her own personal cat grooming business. So Coco's with us today.
Wonderful. Yeah, we do pets. That's fine. Let me tell everybody in our audience a little bit about you. So Deb is founder and CEO of Soul Marketing. I like the way that this bio reads, leading expert. Doesn't come close to describing Deb's passion for brands. More accurate, brand guru. So I'm going to jump into the formal intro here just a little bit and share some personal insight. I was privileged to have Deb come and speak to our elite entrepreneurs community at one of our quarterly Elite Live events not too long ago. And brand guru is the right way to describe her. She's incredibly gifted, knowledgeable, talented when it comes to all things brand. She's written a book on brand 3 times. They're best-selling books. She can tell us more about them later if she would like. She's the founder and CEO of Soul Marketing, as I mentioned, which is a strategy-led marketing firm obsessed with solving major business and branding problems for clients in every industry. Companies throughout the world use Deb's brand values pyramid, ideal customer archetype, and brand swagger questions to align their teams and articulate their brands to audiences. She's been on all sorts of the news outlets, Entrepreneur, Forbes, Fortune, Media Post, New York Times, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She's been a keynote speaker, leads workshops. Again, we were privileged to have her come and speak in our community, and just great to have you here on the show today, Deb. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you so much. And being with your community for those 2 days last month, definitely a highlight of my month and of the year so far. So what a rich and generous community you've brought together. And it was just my pleasure to be there.
Well, thank you, Deb. We have, like I said, the privilege of having both a business owner who gets some of these struggles that we talk about every week on this podcast, but also a subject matter expert. And we want to lean heavily into the subject matter expert part of you today, because branding is with us, right? It's like one of those things, whether we're intentional about it or not, it's happening. And a lot of business owners don't fully appreciate or understand what it is or what it could be for their businesses. And so without me messing it up with a poorly asked question, why don't you just talk to us first about what is brand when you think about a 7-figure business? What role can it play? And then we'll get into some of the questions about your experience with many businesses in that space. And so let's just start with that. What is brand, and how does it even play into this 7-figure growth journey?
Sure. That's a really good question. And when I think about like what a brand is, we should think about a brand as being this magnet, and it has this magnetic pull that brings to you customers, partners, vendors, employees, community members, just friends of the business, but it pulls to you human beings who share values and beliefs that are aligned with the organization behind the brand. And I always tell people that you have a brand whether you like it or not. And it's my job to teach you how to take control of that and really drive what that identity is and turn up the attraction power on that magnet. So I think of a brand, especially for organizations that are in this like $1 to $10 million phase. This is a growing and building and accumulating phase in the business, and it can make or break if you don't have clarity via your brand. And so branding is about this concept. You've heard me talk about this before, this notion of irrational loyalty. And irrational loyalty is when people are so indelibly bonded to your brand, They'd feel like they were cheating on you if they were to choose one of your competitors. Now, I don't know a single business that's in this phase that doesn't want this condition. And to further underscore that level of indispensability and connection that people have with your business, we've done some research at my company to really connect that to financial metrics. And one of the key things that we've learned is that organizations that through their brand create that irrational loyalty, they scale more rapidly, more profitably, with more focus, with less drama, and they make on average 40% more revenue than other brands in their same categories that don't enjoy that condition of irrational loyalty. So that's my case for brand. And then the last thing I'll say about that is that when I talk about the brand, I'm talking about branding with a big B, not a little b. And so little b branding are things like your logo, your tagline, your name, your colors, like your business cards, like sort of the outward facing piece of it. I usually talk about big B branding, which is really about all of the things underneath the surface that no one really sees, but they all feel, they all experience. And that stuff dovetails really, really well with things like your expressed mission, vision, values, all of the strategic foundation for your organization. Your brand is kind of like an outgrowth of that, which is that inclusive of the experience you give your customers and the relationship you have with them, and ultimately the promise that you make them. So it's a strategic activity. All that little b branding stuff, if you imagine an iceberg, which I think I've seen some of your imagery shows like an iceberg, and there's all this stuff below the surface, and then there's this tiny bit that's pointing out at the top. Little b branding is at the top. Big B branding is underneath the surface, along with all of that other stuff that you guys from a just corporate strategy, business strategy, human strategy perspective, it belongs there. It's foundational.
Yeah, I love that distinction. Big B, little b. I've talked to branding experts before. I think you're definitely right at the top of that list. But when I talk to a really good branding person, it's fun. It's fun for me because what we do in Elite, or what I geek out about that you've already referenced, things like purpose and values and that sort of core stuff in a business is really the core of big B branding, and it's the core of internal culture. Mm-hmm. And I just see them as two sides of the same coin. And I love that you described this magnetism, or this magnetic property when you do this right, whether it's customers, vendors, team members, partners, investors, like all of those people get attracted to it. And because we're often talking about the internal benefits of this kind of work, we use the term talent tractor beam, right? It's like just sucking them right in, right?
Yep.
And I hear that same language, that same feel from you when you talk about, when you get branding with a big B right, you're drawing in the people who are going to be irrationally loyal to you the way that you described. I just love that concept.
Yeah. Well, and I always say that branding and culture are indelibly intertwined. Like you can't have one without the other. Then you have like, what is the broken brand promise to employees and also through your customer experience, right? If those two things are not, dovetailing with each other, and it's essential. Like if you have a really strong brand, you're going to attract really strong talent, right? Yeah. I think about in my younger years before I started my own company, when I was out there looking for positions and looking for career mobility, I was looking for employers of choice, right? I was looking for not only great places to work, but brands that I thought delivered a unique value to their customers and really, really stood out. And I had the privilege of working for some of the biggest, best known brands in the world that are still around today, right? And so it's a benefit when you have a strong brand, not just on the marketing and sales side of your business, but for attracting incredible people who want to work there. Even in my own small company, we've done such a good job of creating a very clear, meaningful, resonant brand with our ideal client from an employee standpoint. We make our core values and our mission and vision very visible to people on the outside. I get inquiries all the time from people who say, I see that you don't have any positions available on your website, but I'm so attracted to your brand and what you guys are doing and how you're creating change in the world and the footprint that you've left on this earth, that I really, really, really want to work there. And so imagine, if you will, if you have a brand that attracts humans like that who want to work there and deliver on your brand promise, and then you have the same that attracts customers who want to be part of your brand, like they want to be part of your community, then you have this like magical alchemy which creates like just a very, very strong culture in and out.
I'm guessing I know the answer to this, Deb, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you come across businesses who, I guess, try to court or attract customers through marketing, words, campaigns, copy, branding, if you will, but then who haven't really done this core branding work and the internal, like it's just off with their team members. So they're trying to like create some sort of presence or facade or image in the outward marketplace, but they haven't really done the work to be internally aligned to that. Do you see, I mean, does that lead to some kind of disconnect that gets weird, or like what happens there?
Well, that's what I refer to as the broken brand promise. So anytime you've ever had a disappointing experience with a brand that you patronized, whether that's for your business or for you personally, you have been a victim of the broken brand promise. That's what you're talking about right there. And so a brand is a construct that's made up of two main parts. The first part, and I always talk about these things almost like a yin and a yang. The first part, the core, this is your brand identity. That's the part that you own. That is the part that you drive. That the recipe for creating the brand identity, your mission, your vision, your values, your the way that you show up, the experience that you deliver, the just like all of the values. That's like the tractor beam comes from there, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And then there's this part on the outside, which is the brand image. And the brand image has to match the brand identity. Otherwise you have dissonance, right? I'm trying to think of, back when I lived in Austin, I got my technology services at home from Spectrum Cable, right? Spectrum Cable, they never set out through their marketing to make me feel like they've broken their promise to me, but through their actions, which would be things like if there was an outage or if there was something wrong with the equipment or whatever, I could never fix it on my own. It always required a technician visit. When they would schedule the technician visit, it would be 2 days in the future. So I'm operating by tethering off of my phone, which doesn't get great signal inside my house. The technician, they give me a 4-hour window. It's 12 to 4. They show up at 11:59 a.m. or they show up at 3:59 p.m., neither of which are convenient for me. They come in the house. They don't put the little shoe covers on. They track dirt through the house. They can't fix the problem the first time. You see this goes on and on and on and on and on. But their marketing doesn't match that, does it? So, I feel like I should do a showcase of brands that have broken their promises to customers, but actions speak louder than marketing. And we know that the stuff in the core, the brand identity, and also sort of your core identity as an organization define the actions that you take. So in the same way that your mission, vision, values, purpose, all of those things create guardrails for how you behave and how you make decisions within the organization, the brand is almost like this bolt-on piece that defines how you do that outside of the organization. So that's the broken brand promise, that dissonance. It exists every time you have something happen that you're like, this is not what I signed up for, right?
Yeah. And right at the top of that list, it's so stereotypical, but for some reason, cable companies are right up there, right? Internet companies, public utilities, cell phone companies. Those are the examples we grab for. But we've all had experiences with restaurants like that, with other service providers. We've seen it all the time. And I love the words that you put to it, though. The dissonance, the brand. My memory's going. You just said a phrase that I love. We say it one more time.
I have no idea what I said.
Yeah.
This is why my team records everything I say.
The broken promise.
Oh, the broken brand promise. Yes.
The broken brand promise. That right in the middle of me talking, my head did that thing. The broken brand promise. That is such a great phrase for that icky customer experience that we've all felt Like, that's not what I signed up for. Broken
Mhm.
brand promise. Okay. So let's get right back to these $1 to $10 million businesses. They're in this phase where it's not like they're awkward teenagers, but some of their internal processes, systems, development is still happening, right?
Mhm.
What are some of the, aside from getting clear on that core identity piece that you talked about, what are some of the, I don't know, the best companies or the best brands take these steps to really match that brand experience with that core identity that they want to have?
Yeah, absolutely. So these growing companies that are in the 1 to 10 million phase, I know they're not children, they're not adolescents. They're probably like 25-year-olds where like the parts of the brain are finally connecting with each other, and like, the skull is finally fused and all that kind of stuff, and they're taking off from there. And I always say that branding is an always on activity. And so if you are one of these companies and you're thinking about, is now the right time to think about branding? Remember, I said you have a brand whether you like it or not. So you need to think about it now. And there's some simple things that you can learn from some of the biggest, best known, most successful, most valuable brands in the world. They do just 4 things. They do 4 things, and you can do these things too. Number one, they aim their brand at a singular, ideal, archetypal customer. And when I say a singular, ideal, archetypal customer, it's one human being.
Mm.
Right? In business strategy and operations planning and things like that, we talk about this ideal customer profile. The ideal customer profile doesn't go quite far enough. It gives you an idea, and it gives you some boundary conditions under which you're going to be serving clients. But when you're building a brand, you think about who is the singular human being who is most highly predictive of our success as an organization. It's aspirational. And if you run a services business, you've probably met this person, right? You probably said to your colleagues, you said to yourself, wow, if we could have more customers that are just like Brett, we would be wildly successful because we wouldn't be over servicing them. They would be profitable. They'd be advocating for us. They'd be our champions. They'd be on our side. If you run a product business, you have to really think about, who is this brand for? But create a profile of who that person is. When I was there at your event last month, we actually drew it. Right? We drew a picture of who it was. And if that person has a big heart, draw them with a big red heart in the middle of their chest. If they're a good listener, draw them with big ears. Like, the idea is to be able to see in your mind's eye a picture of the human being that you are for. People buy things from people. When we're developing deep emotional connections with people, it's good to know who you're developing those connections with. So the best brands in the world, they do this. They aim their brand at a singular ideal customer. If you think of brands, I mean, I can think of a bunch of brands that I am not for or are not for me. I'm like, wow, I would never use that. And I'm like repelled by those brands. This is what I would say about those brands. Those brands are doing it right. Legendary brands, valuable brands, the ones that help their organization scale and increase the value of their businesses, they repel people. But most importantly, they attract to them people who are aligned with the brand. So that's the first thing they do. They aim their brand at a singular, ideal, archetypal customer, one human being. And it's like an amalgamation of the best psychographic, attitudinal, and behavioral characters of the best customer for the brand. You want to hear what the other 3 things
Second
are
one.
that
Yeah,
they
I want to
do?
hear the second one now.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second thing they do is they become part of that person's identity. They think of that person as a walking, living, breathing billboard for the brand. You're wearing an Elite Entrepreneurs t-shirt today. You are the very embodiment of the brand. It is part of your identity. I had lunch today with David. He was wearing the same t-shirt. He was also wearing his signature flip-flops.
Yes.
It's a little warm here right now, but think of that person, that ideal customer, as being the living, breathing, walking billboard for the brand. You are part of their identity. You are part of their very identity structure, and you elevate their self-concept, not just to other people, but to themselves. So we talked when we were together in February, we talked about this notion of Maslow's hierarchy, that people are on this path to self-actualization. So people who are running businesses here, what people buy, what they eat, what they drink, what they wear, the software they hire for their companies, the home services businesses they hire to keep their home neat and tidy and safe. All of those things are part of their path to self-actualization. So the second thing that the best brands in the world do is they become part of that person's concept and help move them up that pyramid to self-actualization. You still
Okay.
with
And
me?
I'm still with you. And
Okay.
I remember you having, and it may not have been this part of your talk, but I remember you having people like raise their hand if they would admit that they were, Android
Or iPhone users, right?
iPhone users, right?
Yep.
And that becomes part of identity, like you said, like not just the company's brand identity, but the people. Like if I am an iPhone user, that's part of who I am, right?
It is part of who you are. Like you're either a Mac person or you're a not Mac person. Remember those TV commercials? I'm a Mac, I'm a PC. Like they
Right.
were really tapping into that identity structure. If you've ever identified as a Coke person or a Pepsi person or a Ford person or a Chevy person or whatever,
Yeah.
it becomes part of who you are. If you're a sports fan and you have a favorite team and you wear their jersey, it's part of your identity. Brands, companies that are in this $1 to $10 million phase of their growth have the power to become part of people's identities, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you
Okay. I love that
need
one.
to do
Okay.
that.
So let's go to the third one then.
All right, the third one is the best brands in the world are not just different, they're singular, they're unique. And so let me pause on this one a little bit because people sometimes scratch their head about this. I do a lot of consulting and I've worked around a lot of businesses, and a word that gets tossed around all the time is like, what's your differentiation? What's your point of differentiation? What's your unique selling proposition?
Yeah.
All of that. So I am here to say, this is a controversial opinion, but I am here to say that it's not enough to be different. It is not enough to be different, because if you're different, you are opening yourself up to comparison with others, right? The best brands in the world are singular. They are non-imitatable. Is that the word? Imitable.
Yeah.
They have characteristics that only they own. They are singular. They're irreplaceable. And even if you offer a service or a product that is similar to something in another category, you still can be singular in the way that you serve your customers and the promise that you deliver to them. Here's a really good example for you. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. Ritz-Carlton. Ritz-Carlton, do you remember their brand promise?
I don't. But
It,
it was like ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen or
that
something
is
like
the brand promise. We
that.
are
Okay.
ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you can stay in a Marriott. You can stay you could stay in a St. Regis, which is in the same category as the Ritz-Carlton. You could stay in a Four Seasons. There is something singular about the Ritz-Carlton experience at every single touch point in the relationship. They offer a bed and a place to lay your head with clean linens, a towel, and a shower, just like everything else in the category. But the uniqueness of the brand, it makes it distinctive, and it puts a competitive moat around the organization. Here's taking it down to the level of a brand that's on the level of the brands that you work with. My company, Soul Marketing, you can't swing a cat over your head and not hit 100 other companies that do exactly what we do. They offer the same services. We do the same things. We make the same sort of empty promises to one another. But the one thing that people get from hiring my firm that they don't get from anyone else is the proverbial kick in the pants, right? Because deep, deep, deep in our core, we do hard things. A win for one is a win for all. That's part of our core values, right? Our employees are the CEOs of their own desk. And we have this big, hairy, audacious goal to take a disruptive dark horse brand and make them a top 5 most valuable global brand. That means you don't need a marketing agency that's going to put trains on the tracks and make sure they run on time. You need a marketing agency that's going to push you to do the best you can to lay the best tracks possible. It's a different way of showing up, but that's the one thing they get from us. So the best brands in the world, not just different, they're unique.
Great.
And then
Last one. Number 4.
Number 4, bringing it home. Best brands in the world are not about themselves. They're about their customers. I always tell people, like if I'm speaking to a big group of people, this is the point in the talk where I'm like, get out your mobile phone, go to your company webpage and tell me if the first word on the page is your company name or the word we. If so, you are doing it wrong. The best brands in the world make their customer the hero. They make their customer the hero in their own stories. That requires them to understand. Remember, we talked number 1, they aim their brand at a singular, ideal, archetypal customer. right? That means they need to understand, what is that human being's set of values? What are their beliefs? What are they trying to achieve? What does the top of their Mount Everest look like? What does it mean to them when they're looking down? And how do they, as a company, get that person to the top? They let the customer be the hero. And in fact, they propel that customer to the top of the hill so they can plant the flag and be the winner. And so that formula: ideal customer, one human being who's most predictive of your success. Number two, become part of their identity. Number three, don't just be different, be unique. And number four, make your customer the hero. If you just do those things, then you can emulate some of these biggest, best known household name brands that are extremely successful in attracting the greatest ecosystems to themselves.
Love that. Powerful summary of what it means to do big B branding. And aside from, the internal branding thing that you said, this yin and yang, or you said at the center, the brand identity piece might feel a little internally focused. But those other things, the brand experience you talked about, those 4 keys of doing the brand work to make that all line up, 3 of those 4, as I heard them, were very customer focused, very externally focused. The one about being unique, maybe that was more internally focused, but the other ones were very much about that customer profile becoming part of their identity, and then making it so that they're the hero. Like that was powerful for me. So thank you so much for sharing that. Anything else you want to leave with? Like, if big B branding sounds so big to me as a 7-figure business owner, like how can I get started? Where would I begin doing this work?
I think the best place to get started is to create your ideal customer archetype picture, like getting your team aligned on who aspirationally are we aiming this brand at. When I work with organizations and individuals who are just getting started on branding, they do that one exercise and it's so incredibly clarifying for them. And it's something that gets everybody on the same page. When I work hands-on with clients, we actually bring the big butcher paper. It's like that long roll of paper that we used to use in grade school, and you trace a human being on it and we draw it life size, right? And then that becomes this artifact that like lives in the business. I even have some clients, believe it or don't, they've turned that into like a full size, like life size cutout of their ideal customer, and they bring that person with them to their strategy meetings. They give that person a seat at the table. That is probably the most clarifying exercise, and that's the thing that has the leaders of these businesses like champing at the bit about how do we truly bond with this person. And then I want to come back to one thing that you said about, my statement about it's not enough to be different. You have to be unique. You have to be singular. That is in the customer's mind. And so the question that you ask to really define what is your singularity or your uniqueness, it's a very simple question. What is the one thing that we bring them or that we do for them that they can't get anywhere else? And here's a hint. It's never a feature. It's never a service. It's never an IDI, reliability, availability, scalability, manageability, adaptability. It's never an smaller, faster, bigger, whatever. It's a superpower. What is the superpower that you give to your customers that they don't get anywhere else? And that's really where that uniqueness comes from. So hopefully that changes your mindset around that idea. Everything in branding is externally facing, and it is the sum total of the internal work you've done to define your core identity as an organization. And then really you're taking that piece of, okay, now how are we going to show up to our customers? And we're going to create a transformative experience for them through our products or our services.
Well, Deb, I know that our listeners could hear that if I asked good enough questions and we had enough time in the day, we could just keep going and you would keep
I would keep going. I'm like the Energizer Bunny.
Yeah.
It's hard to stop me.
What you've shared is extremely valuable, and just the simple frameworks that you've started with will give lots of business owners in this space, 1 to 10 million, some very practical things that they can start to do. I love the cutout. Bring them to your leadership meeting, to your planning offsite. That was just a really fun idea, and not just fun, but very practical, impactful way to invite those people into your decision making. Wonderful time together. Thank you so much for being here, Deb. If people want to learn more about soul marketing or connect with you online somewhere, how would they do that?
I think the best way to connect with me, you can go to my website, go to debgabor.com, and you can get access there to information about my books and speaking and videos. One of the cool features on that website, there's some resources there that are available for free, some digital downloads that are brand exercises that, when you're ready to get started, the ideal customer archetype exercise is there, the 3 brand questions exercise, which we covered here. What does it say about a person that they use your brand? What's the one thing they get from you that they don't get from anyone else? And then finally, how do you make them a hero? There are organized exercises around those and even more. That's a great way to get in touch with me. If you're interested in my company, the company is called Soul Marketing, Soul, S-O-L, like the sun in Spanish. And, we're all over the place. Also, my business communication social media platform of choice is LinkedIn. So you can find me there, post lots of information there. I do a lot of LinkedIn live things and, love to connect with people everywhere. And if you heard us talking on this podcast and you have a burning question about branding, or you've gotten to work on some of these attributes and you'd like to have somebody look it over, I will talk to anybody about branding. I guess, Brett, you've kind of figured that out. I'll talk to you about your brand, about your strategy, we'll reflect, help you make it better. I personally am on a mission to serve 1 million brands and help them, achieve the transformative power of irrational loyalty for their own businesses. Through my company, we are creating over $1 billion worth of brand value for emerging and sustaining brands. And so those things, they all dovetail together. So I am here in service to the community. Just if you reach out to me, let me know where we met or where you heard me, so that I know to be nice to you.
All right, very good, Deb. Thank you again for being here, folks. As you can tell, just in the brief time that I've had with her here, she knows her stuff when it comes to brands. A brand guru is the closest thing we're going to get to the accurate description of who Deb Gabor is. Please tell everybody about this episode and about our podcast. We want to help as many 7-figure business owners as possible with these scaling challenges and growth opportunities that we experience from 1 to 10 million. Share, like, do all that stuff, and be sure to be with us next time for another great episode. Thanks for being here today.
You've been listening to the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Brett Gilliland. Be sure to leave a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. You may also want to visit our website, eliteentrepreneurspodcast.com, to find additional resources to grow your business from 7 figures to 10 million and beyond.